Is Capricorn Clark set to take down Diddy by voicing her own ordeals she went through when she worked for him? Courtroom whispers erupted the moment her name appeared on the witness list, swirling through the gallery like a storm front, smashing open the doors of secrecy. For years, Clark stood at the epicenter of Shawn Combs' empire, steering marketing launches, shadow managing personal chaos, and guarding corporate vaults of information so sensitive even senior executives dared not peek. Now, she is poised to flip the spotlight and reveal the hidden machinery that allegedly kept intimidation payments flowing and insiders silent. From the first gavel drop, prosecutors painted her as the ultimate insider, the assistant turned brand strategist who knew the mogul's travel calendars, private passwords, and, more importantly, his darkest indulgences. While Cassie Ventura's earlier testimony shook observers with depictions of marathon encounters fueled by intoxicants and strangers, Clark's potential narrative promises to trace the money that greased those nights and the fists that closed around dissenters. Reports already suggest she walked away only after an Interscope subsidiary wrote a six-figure check to erase bruises no publicist could spin. But then, an even grimmer tale surfaced. Kid Cudi told jurors that Clark phoned him from a moving vehicle, voice trembling, saying she had been forced to ride shotgun while the mogul allegedly invaded the rapper's home. That single call links her to witness intimidation, kidnapping claims, and the chilling notion that loyalty inside this circle was enforced at knuckle point. If she confirms that timeline under oath, the prosecution gains not only an eyewitness, but a living ledger of threats, payouts, and backstage panic. Her entrance signals a brutal pivot in strategy, move from lurid parties to corporate cover-up. But then a single email threatened to detonate everything the defense hoped to bury. Dated December 23, 2011, the message flew from Cassie Ventura to her mother with Capricorn Clark copied on it, capturing in cold text the mogul's alleged promise to release intimate tapes and arrange bodily harm for both Cassie and Kid Cudi. The timing could not be darker. It arrived the very day Clark was juggling flights, hotels, and holiday logistics for her boss, a snapshot of how menace interlaced with mundane business in Diddy's orbit. Investigators now treat that email like forensic gold. The language is blunt. Cassie writes that Shawn Combs will have someone hurt her and Cudi while he conveniently travels abroad to craft an alibi. She says 2 private recordings depicting intimate acts will go public as punishment for disobedience. Clark's presence on the recipient line confirms she was not a distant functionary, but a direct witness to both threat and terror in real time. Legal strategists argue that forwarding such a message to an assistant signals desperation because Cassie believed Clark could either intervene or testify later if the worst occurred. Inside the courthouse, prosecutors display the email on a massive screen, letting jurors read the threats word for word while Clark's name glows in the carbon copy field. Defense attorneys cringe, knowing they cannot claim fabrication without accusing the same assistant they once praised as invaluable. If Clark authenticates the email, she undermines any narrative that Cassie exaggerated. She also opens a corridor to possible witness intimidation charges, tracing how fear served as glue for the entire empire. But the document alone is not the only dagger. It sets up a cascade of follow-up questions about company funds used to muzzle victims' digital evidence wiped from servers and executives who allegedly chose profit over protection. In sworn accounts, Kid Cudi describes an urgent call that lit up his phone on a quiet Los Angeles evening. On the line was Clark, her voice a mix of panic and resolve, saying she was inside a black SUV with Shawn Combs speeding toward the rapper's home. She warned that the mogul was enraged and had already vowed to confront anyone linked to Cassie Ventura. That moment froze Cudi because Clark was no gossip blogger, but the senior aide who arranged international product launches and million-dollar sponsorships. If she sounded terrified, then danger was riding shotgun. Minutes later, security footage obtained by investigators showed exterior cameras at Cudi's residence abruptly tilted away from the doors. Gifts under the tree were ripped open. A beloved family dog found cowering in a corner refused to eat for days. Cudi raced back only to find the SUV gone and his home violated like an open diary. The assistant's call became the critical breadcrumb connecting rumored threats to physical intrusion. It suggested a chain of command where even key employees were coerced into facilitating fear tactics. Prosecutors argue that Clark's testimony will transform this episode from hearsay into a hard narrative. If she confirms being compelled into that vehicle, the defense faces an allegation of kidnapping layered atop unlawful entry and intimidation. The jury would then view the mogul not as a distant executive, but as an active participant who weaponized loyal staff. Clark can also explain whether company credit cards paid for gas, meals, or surveillance equipment that night, showing how business resources blurred into personal vendettas. The unanswered question is what price was later paid to keep that silence intact, and whether accounting records trace hush payments back to corporate accounts. Court filings now reveal that after an incident in which Clark was allegedly struck during a heated backstage confrontation, executives at Interscope Records signed a glamorous settlement check so she would disappear from the public narrative. The sum is rumored to have been large enough to fund an entire startup, but the payment came with an unspoken clause: stay quiet or lose everything. Clark accepted the funds, yet kept meticulous mental notes of every meeting, every threat, and every bruised morning when the mirror confirmed what the bank balance already knew. Silence had a price. Insiders say the payoff was processed through a labyrinth of shell vendors normally reserved for concert staging and marketing budgets, an attempt to mask the outflow as routine entertainment expenses. Prosecutors have already subpoenaed ledgers from the era, and financial analysts are dissecting line items that list curious consulting fees routed through third-party entities linked to Diddy's business manager. If Clark corroborates this scheme under oath, the courtroom will see how corporate dollars allegedly cloaked personal wrongdoing, transforming what might have been a private altercation into evidence of enterprise-level obstruction. Her testimony will likely outline conversations in which executives urged her to sign non-disclosure agreements with phrases like protect the brand and consider your future recited as though they were motivational speeches rather than veiled threats. She is expected to describe nights spent in hotel lobbies while lawyers negotiated terms, as well as the chilling moment she realized accepting the payout could make her complicit in covering a pattern of intimidation. That realization fuels her decision to speak now, despite the wealth she once received, and it positions her to illustrate how money flowed parallel to menace inside the entertainment powerhouse, ultimately converging on the same victims who now fill the witness roster. Dawn Richard's civil suit sketches a night inside the mogul's mansion when music faded into a chorus of pleas and Clark found herself stationed at the doorway, balancing loyalty against basic humanity. Guests were lured with promises of free-flowing champagne, yet the real agenda was a so-called buffet where incapacitated young women became objects of spectacle. Clark recalls Diddy circling the room like a director on a sordid film set, urging attendees to enjoy themselves while his security enforced a silent perimeter. When Richard begged to leave the horror show, Clark reportedly whispered that a swift exit would trigger suspicion and retaliation. She asked for 15 minutes to craft a cover story so the star could slip out unnoticed. That conversation is pivotal. It shows Clark navigating a minefield where refusing an order could invite violence, while complying made her an accessory to exploitation. Her eventual success in shepherding Richard to safety did not erase the images of motionless bodies sprawled across velvet couches or the cold detachment in Diddy's eyes as he toasted another round. Prosecutors want Clark to describe the logistics behind these gatherings. How were invite lists curated? Which corporate cards financed the luxury suites and private transportation? Was there a standing directive to confiscate phones at the door? Her account could reveal an organized system in which staff rotated victims through rooms while personal assistants tracked alibis and destroyed evidence. By confirming that she felt trapped and coerced, Clark would underline the pattern of psychological control at the heart of the case. That pattern extends beyond mansion walls into high-profile industry dinners, where Clark witnessed public outbursts escalate to hidden violence, setting the stage for deeper revelations about global brand image masking private terror. It happened inside a trendy West Hollywood restaurant, where chandeliers glistened over a guest list that included Jimmy Iovine, Usher, and Neo. The table buzzed with talk of chart dominance and multi-million-dollar collaborations until an argument between Combs and Cassie Ventura erupted without warning. Witnesses recall the mogul leaning in, hissing words only Cassie could hear before driving a fist into her stomach with such force that she doubled over in pain. Clark reacted instantly, rising from her seat as crystal glasses trembled. She wrapped an arm around Cassie, guiding her past frozen waiters and horrified guests, while Combs resumed sipping wine as though nothing had happened. That exit was not merely an act of compassion, it was a risk. Removing Cassie angered the man signing Clark's paychecks and exposed a truth executives had long ignored. Violence was not confined to private mansions. It could surface under the brightest lights where reputations are carefully curated. The prosecution intends for Clark to describe what unfolded in the minutes that followed, how she ushered Cassie into a waiting car, pressed an ice pack to her abdomen, and begged security to keep paparazzi away. Back inside the dining room, Combs reportedly joked with producers, while the restaurant staff debated calling authorities. Clark's testimony could shatter any claim that alleged mistreatment was hidden or exaggerated. Here was a packed room of influencers staring at a battered woman, yet silence prevailed, proof of the climate of fear that muted witnesses even in public. But then another detail intensifies the narrative. Interscope leaders attending the dinner allegedly offered assurances that the incident would never reach tabloids. If Clark confirms hushed backroom deals that night, it paints corporations as enablers and builds the prosecution's case for enterprise-level complicity. Imagine waking up stranded in a foreign country with no passport because the superstar you served decided abandonment was a lesson you needed to learn. Glasgow, 2010, became that nightmare for one of Combs' female aides. And Capricorn Clark says she watched the cruelty unfold step by step. The European leg of the Dirty Money tour had just wrapped when a late-night pool gathering spiraled into chaos. Witness Dawn Richard recounts several men surrounding the assistant in the hotel water while Combs lounged nearby, sipping champagne, treating the humiliation like background entertainment. Clark, already shaken by earlier incidents, noticed the woman's alarm as she tried to reach for a towel. When the assistant finally escaped to her room, she discovered her passport missing from the security pouch she always kept in her bag. Clark alleges Combs pocketed the document before boarding a private jet the next morning, leaving the staffer trapped in the United Kingdom without identification or funds. The message was clear. Obedience was not optional, and dissent would be punished with isolation. Legal analysts say this single act illustrates unlawful restraint and sets up a broader argument for racketeering by showing a deliberate tactic of intimidation across international borders. Prosecutors intend for Clark to outline the frantic phone calls she made to embassy hotlines and label executives begging for help, while Combs posted smiling photos from the jet cabin. Her story bridges private torment to public indifference, depicting a culture where subordinates were disposable once they threatened the image of unstoppable success. But then comes the financial paper trail that followed the Glasgow abandonment, a series of wire transfers and travel vouchers allegedly designed to pacify the marooned assistant and suppress any media leak. Those payments open the path to Point 8, where Clark will map the flow of hush funds that traveled faster than any tour jet across continents, follow the money, and the truth often sprints out from the shadows. Financial investigators uncovered a pattern of wire transfers that reads like an instruction manual for staged silence. In the days after the Glasgow abandonment, Combs' business manager authorized multiple payments routed through third-party production vendors based in Delaware and the Cayman Islands. The listed purpose sounded mundane: venue scouting, wardrobe purchase, promotional staging. Bank auditors now say not one of those explanations matches the timing or scale of the cash flow. Instead, each transfer correlates almost to the hour with frantic emails from stranded staff pleading for help and to Clark's own internal memos warning that morale was collapsing under fear. Clark is expected to walk jurors through spreadsheets. Prosecutors have enlarged onto courtroom screens. They show six-figure sums landing in accounts linked to aides who had just endured humiliation or violence. The message appears chillingly simple: take the money and erase the memory. Compliance contracts followed days later, drafted by the same entertainment law firm that handled tour sponsorships. In effect, corporate resources became a financial shock blanket thrown over bruised reputations. But then one payment stands out. On December 28, 2010, a consulting fee of $200,000 hit the account of a limited liability company recently registered by an offshore trustee. Investigators traced the ultimate beneficiary to the assistant abandoned in Glasgow. The invoice description reads, "Brand Insights Europe," a deliberately vague phrase that hides more than it reveals. Clark can testify that no brand review occurred. The money was hush compensation delivered with the expectation that the assistant would never tell her story, an expectation now crumbling under subpoena power. These transactions connect emotional trauma to cold finance, illustrating how an empire used spreadsheets as silencers. They also set the stage for Clark's personal reckoning on social media, where rage erupted after years of enforced quiet. Shockwaves tore through social media when Capricorn Clark finally broke her silence with a blistering thread that read like a manifesto against the entire entertainment machine. Her first post thundered that Black women keep getting fed to the industry like sacrificial lambs, and she tagged it to protect Black women in real life. Millions watched in real time as one of the mogul's most trusted insiders shredded the veil of glamour by describing 11 years of private torment. She wrote that allies who once celebrated her vision suddenly vanished when she stopped covering for a man she compared to the devil. That fury instantly drew the attention of legal watchdogs who realized the narrative was no longer sealed inside courtroom walls but exploding into the public square. Digital forensic teams archived every deleted reply because Clark's timeline revealed crucial information. She thanked Cassie Ventura for holding her down during dark years and admitted she once hovered on the edge of despair, wondering if anyone would ever believe her. Prosecutors now plan to use those posts to demonstrate a long-running pattern of coercion that stretched beyond financial payouts and into psychological warfare. The messages also counter the defense claim that recent witnesses are motivated by fame-seekers' greed. Clark published her grievances long before subpoenas arrived, indicating a desire for accountability, not profit. Industry figures scrambled to distance themselves as screenshots circulated showing congratulatory messages they once sent to Clark after successful campaign launches. Now, those same executives face questions about how much they knew and why they ignored her distress calls. Sponsors quietly pulled banners from archived music videos, and streaming services adjusted playlist algorithms to minimize backlash. But then Courtroom strategy shifts to the ultimate question that could make or break the case. Will the government grant Clark immunity so she can unload her entire memory cache without fear of self-incrimination? Immunity could become the legal grenade that tears open the last vault of secrets surrounding Shawn Combs, and Capricorn Clark is poised to pull the pin. Prosecutors have hinted that they will protect her from self-incrimination if she lays out every ledger entry, every witness intimidation script, and every hush agreement she ever handled. Defense lawyers are already panicking because that promise of protection turns the courtroom into a truth zone where Clark can unload without calculating the personal fallout. Jury members will finally hear an unfiltered chronicle from the woman who scheduled private jets for global tours in the daylight while scrambling to hide bruised employees at night. If granted immunity, Clark can connect handwritten notes to corporate emails, turning circumstantial threads into a woven pattern of enterprise-level misconduct. She can explain how company attorneys drafted non-disclosure clauses that read like grooming manuals for silence, and how certain high-ranking label executives considered payouts a routine cost of business. Analysts say her live testimony, coupled with financial forensics, could satisfy the elements necessary for racketeering charges that target not only Combs, but the structure that enabled him. A successful racketeering conviction carries sentences measured in decades and cripples financial empires through asset seizure. Meanwhile, the cultural fallout intensifies. Brands once desperate for Combs' endorsement now rewrite contracts overnight, fearful they could be subpoenaed for marketing budgets that doubled as peace offerings. Streaming giants quietly rotate his tracks off Prime playlists to dampen publicity risk. Insider sources whisper that investors are preparing breach of morality clauses should a verdict go south. All of that hinges on Clark standing tall, oath-bound, telling the jury how a glamour empire was fueled by calculated terror and lavish hush cash. Courtroom doors reopen after the holiday recess, and the moment Clark raises her right hand, the air will thicken with the weight of an empire on trial. The next words she speaks could collapse a legend and rewrite the entertainment landscape forever.